Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Laura Prada from our Telesur studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with our news. You stay with us. We start in the Caribbean. Thousands of people in the Dominican Republic took to the streets in Santo Domingo, the capital, to protest against the Electoral Authority. On Saturday night, they reached the headquarters of the Central Electoral Board, with protesters demanding respect for democracy. Last Sunday, February 16, Dominicans were scheduled to vote in municipal elections, but they were suspended due to voting irregularities. Meanwhile, citizens who stayed at home organized a protest by banging pots and pans. They demanded transparency and clean elections. To know the latest information coming from Santo Domingo, we have the following report from our correspondent, Daisy Toussaint. Welcome, Daisy.
Opposition's party and their supporters held a march on Sunday, February 23th, in defense of democracy. The demonstrations comes a week after the suspension of the country's municipal elections on February 16th, which authorities say was due to flaw in the automated voting system. The system was being used in 18 of the country's 158 municipalities. The political party País Islands did not participate in today's march, saying that the meaning of this daily protest have been destroyed. Starting 2 hours later than that announced, the march began on Máximo Gómez Avenue, making a journey of 4 kilometers to the Independence Park and arriving to the altar of the homeland, where the remains of the country's founding further rest. Opposition leaders called on the government to provide guarantee that the municipal elections scheduled for next March 15th and the congressional and presidential elections in May will all be held. The movement We Are the People, one of the main organizers of this daily protest against the Central Electoral Board, announced yesterday that they will not attend today's march because they did not want that the people's struggles is linked with any political party. Protests are expected to continue through the country and the Dominican community over the coming days. There is also a massive call for protests on February 27th, which is the Dominican Independence Day, when President Danilo Medina is expected to give a speech on the state of the country.
Thank you, Daisy. That was Daisy Toussaint straight from the Caribbean, from the Dominican Republic. And we go to the neighboring Haiti, where soldiers have shot at least and police officers who have been protesting for days, demanding improved conditions of service and the right to form labor unions. The protesting officers, accompanied by civilian supporters, on Sunday attempt to march to the presidential palace to seek an audience with President Jovenel Moïse. The march was, however, brought to a sudden halt after soldiers guarding the palace opened fire at the procession. And social movements in Colombia have joined teachers who continue striking against the humanitarian crisis in the country and the neoliberal policies of President Iván Duque. Let's take a closer look on the following story.
Teachers, social movements and unions have joined the strike on the streets of Colombia to reject the murder of social leaders.
Here in Colombia, we're going through a terrible humanitarian crisis this year. Only in 2020, 51 social leaders have been killed. That is worse than in the time of the dictatorship in Latin America.
Those in the strike are also rejecting the neoliberal reforms by President Iván Duque, labor and pension reforms that seek to worsen the economic situation of workers in the country, measures implemented at the behest of the International Monetary Fund.
The government starting the legislative year on March 16th has planned a radical reform to the pension and justice system. a project to control social protests. The political class wants to impose through Congress a neoliberal reform. And that's why we are making this strike stronger.
The strike in Bogota reached the emblematic Bolivar Square and then spread to the rest of the country. It wants to rejuvenate the social struggle on the streets and demand that President Duque does not turn his back on the people and their reality. The people want him to listen to the demand.
We will continue with the strike. We will march until the government begins a negotiation with the National Strike Committee.
Meanwhile, social movements are demanding respect for their lives. Youth leader Yuri Ortiz was murdered in the municipality of Segovia, Department of Antioquia, and former FARC combatant Winston Moreno was also killed in the Department of Choco. They have since called for another national strike on the 25th of March.
And now we move on beyond Latin America and the Caribbean frontiers. We go on to Israel, where Israeli security forces have killed one Palestinian youth and injured two others in the besieged Gaza Strip. Palestine health officials confirmed that two other men were injured by gunfire on Sunday while trying to retrieve the body of a man who had been shot dead by Israeli soldiers near the separation wall. A statement by Israeli Defense Ministry claimed that the 26-year-old man was shot dead while attempting to plant explosive on the border fence. And Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders has registered a decisive victory in Nevada's Democratic Presidential Caucus. Sanders polled 44.7, beating his closest rival, former Vice President Joe Biden, who scored 19.5%. South Bend, Indiana's former Mayor Pete Buttigieg, who came out second in the New Hampshire primaries, stood at 15.6%. The win tightened Sanders' grip on the race, which moved to South Carolina next weekend.
Let me thank the people of Nevada for their support. In Nevada, we have just put together a multi-generational, multi-racial coalition, which is going to not only win in Nevada, it's going to sweep this country.
Like this, we make a first break. Remember, follow us on Twitter at Telesur English and on my account at Laura Petersur. We'll be right back.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Earth. Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursdays, only on Telesur.
We are back with our news. In Chile, hundreds of demonstrators gathered at Quinta Vergara to reject the Viña del Mar International Song Festival. Demonstrators say the festival is part of Augusto Pinochet's dictatorship legacy and also a sign that current President Sebastián Piñera pays little attention to mass protests against social inequalities that have been rocking the country since last October. Meanwhile, there were several reports of festival security heavily repressing protesters. And a group of protesters in Valparaíso have damaged the monument of the heroes of the Battle of Iquique using paint, bombs. Defense Minister Alberto Espinosa heavily rejected the incident, warning demonstrators that such acts of vandalism could easily lead to the authorization of firearms against protesters. In Guatemala, the Ministry of Defense has issued restraint orders against Mayan families in the department of Alta Verapaz who denounced their forced eviction. The family says a local judge have evicted them from their home located in the outskirts of the city of Coban. But their legal team says that the order had no legal basis and will appeal the decision. And we move on to Brazil, where tens of thousands of revelers are out on the streets of Rio de Janeiro taking part in the world-famous Rio Carnival. Vying from the title of Carnival Champions, the city's 13 top samba schools will have 1 hour each to wow spectators and judges with elaborate shows, flash and with armies of colorful dancers and drummers. This year's carnival is also being used to take a stand against intolerance and oppression of minorities by President Jair Bolsonaro. Reigning champions Mangueira are staging a parade that will tell the story of Jesus born in the favela who stands up to prophets of intolerance.
This matter of religious intolerance, I personally prefer to say that it is religious racism. It's not is intolerance, it is more than that, because it is prejudice against the African Brazilian cultures. Today is very intense thing, mostly because there was significant progress of neo-Pentecostal religions, Christian fundamentals, and some of them, not all. We can't put everything in the same basket, but some have a really hostile speech.
With these colorful images of the Rio Carnival, we go for a second break. You stay with us.
We share your feelings, exalt your accomplishments, and show your reality. Our approach is global and keeps us in tune with the peoples. Caribbean countries also get our signal. With enthusiasm, we will continue to broadcast for them. Because we are Telesur, the news broadcaster from South America and the Caribbean. Discover the cultural diversity that defines a continent. The place where art and tradition are part of the same nucleus. Artistic expressions, values, real life. Fridays, only on Telesur.
A review of the world news that investigates, incites analysis and induces criticism, because every event has a context.
Pusimos el punto en ahí.
Dotting the I. Saturdays, only on Telesur.
Una travesía para descubrirnos. Buscamos conexiones perdidas.
No nos queda otra que luchar, porque no tenemos nada que perder.
Realmente es por todos.
Recorremos el mundo con Reportajes Telesur.
We are back with our news. The death toll in China from the COVID-19 epidemic rose to past 2,400 on Sunday after 96 more people died in Hubei province, the hard-hit epicenter of the outbreak. According to the National Health Commission, the majority of deaths occurred in the city of Wuhan, where virus first emerged in December. The total number of confirmed cases currently stands at 76,936. Meanwhile, Italian authorities are racing to contain the biggest outbreak of coronavirus in Europe, sailing all the war-affected towns of banning public events after a third patient died of the illness. The Civil Protection Unit said the number of cases of the virus totaled are 152. Almost a dozen towns in Lombardy and Veneto regions have been placed under quarantine, with local urged to stay home and special permission needed to enter or leave the designated areas.
152 in total, of which 3 are deceased. The victim of Cremona, to which we added 2 victims from last week, and the healed men whom we know about.
There are an additional 648 diagnosed cases of the virus, an additional 97 cases of death, of which 96 cases are in Hubei, and in Guangdong there are an additional 822 suspected cases of the virus, and an additional 2,230 cases cured and discharged from hospital.
And the Iranian government have closed down of schools, universities and cultural centers in several cities and provinces for at least 2 days to reduce the spread of COVID-19 virus. As death toll rises to 8, the number of those infected was also raised from 28 to 43 people. Meanwhile, the Minister of Science issued a directive to ban visitors from university dorms and close student camps and swimming pools, while for weeks there were rumors of the disease in Iran. Authorities announced the first cases only on February 19, when the first victims died.
We have had 43 people who have been diagnosed to be certainly infected by the COVID-19 virus in the country. 8 of these dear patients have lost their lives over the past days.
We continue talking of Iran, but we change topic. Interior Minister Abdol Reza Rahani Fazli said that voters' turnout in last Friday's parliamentary election was around 42%, marking the first time in deep below 50% since the country's 1979 revolution.
24,512,404 people voted in the election, 48% of whom were women and 52% others were men. It means that these elections stand at 42 to 57%.
But the Iranian Interior Minister said the low voter turnout is largely due to the most recent incidents in the country, like the coronavirus outbreak or the central shooting of Ukrainian commercial flight.
When we held this election, we were experiencing different incidents in the country and climatic circumstances were not appropriate either. We also had the coronavirus disease as well as a specific political situation in the country that had arisen from the plane crash in November 2019 issues. However, given the mood of the country, which was contrary to what our dear people who jubilantly voted in this election desired, and given the current circumstances, we believe that the number of votes and the turnout is absolutely acceptable.
And dozens of people have protested in South African city of Cape Town against what they are calling the government's anti-poor policies. The protesters, calling themselves the Excluded, are drawn from various social organizations representing women, youth, homeless people, and informal settlement residents. The protest comes a day before Finance Minister Tito Mboweni unveils the country's 2020 national budget, which is expected to unleash austerity measures that trade unions have described as a savage attack on the working class. And counting is underway in Togo's presidential elections amid claims of voting irregularities. Some 2 million voters flocked to more than 9,000 polling stations across the country. The vote is to vote in an election widely expected to see President Faure Nsangimbe win a fourth term. Meanwhile, on Saturday evening, opposition candidate Agbeyome Kojo told journalists that to denounce allegedly voting irregularities, he claimed that in some parts of the country, ruling party supporters were allowed to vote twice at illegal polling stations. In Turkey, at least 9 people were killed and 50 others injured after an earthquake struck in the Iranian-Turkey border region, according to authorities. The magnitude 5.7 earthquake, which centered on the Iranian city of Koy, affected villages in the province of Van. Rescue workers have been deployed to the Iranian-Turkey border region, which is prone to powerful earthquake. Last month, more than 40 people were killed when by an earthquake struck the same region.
Unfortunately, we have lost 9 of our citizens in this morning's disaster. 50 of our citizens were injured. 2 people from the injured that are being treated at the 3 hospitals in the region are in intensive care. Meaning, I can say that we have 2 citizens in a critical condition. In this context, those of our patients that needed surgery received the necessary intervention. I want to say that the other injured are in good condition and they are not under life-threatening situation.
Algerians have rallied in the capital Algiers to mark the first anniversary of the protest movement that ousted longtime leader Abdelaziz Bouteflika. Police used water cannons to disperse demonstrators as they tried to march towards the presidential palace. The protesters vowed to continue protesting until all leaders associated with the previous regime stepped down. Mass protests first broke out on 22nd February 2018 after Bouteflika announced his intentions to run for a 5th term. An intervention by the army forced him to step down 6 weeks after the protests started.
We are not coming out to celebrate the first anniversary of the Hirak so long as there are still political prisoners. We are not coming out to celebrate the first anniversary of the Hirak so long as justice isn't yet free. We are not coming out to celebrate the first anniversary of the Hirak so long as police continue to crack down on the people. We are not coming out to celebrate the first anniversary of the Hirak so long as the media still spread disinformation. We are not coming out to celebrate the first anniversary of the Hirak so long as we don't have the rule of law.
And thousands of Moroccans have marched on the city of Casablanca to denounce social inequalities and demand the release of political detainees. The crowds protested peacefully against the high cost of living, poor public services and economic policies, which they say are responsible for the deterioration of the local currency's purchasing power. The demonstration was organized by the Moroccan Social Front, a collective of 4 leftist parties and labor unions.
The Social Front is a result of 3 years of thought on behalf of democratic left-wing militants and their will to create a social force that will be able to face the savage neoliberal policies that we see today and have fallen upon the Moroccan people's day-to-day lives.
And dozens of people have marched in the German city of Hanau after death of the 9 people in an anti-immigrant shooting. The crowd first gathered outside Arena Bar, where some of the victims were shot dead during the attack on February 19th. The shooting was carried out by a 43-year-old white German man who left a confessional letter outlining right-wing extremist views in his home before going on a shooting rampage. Like this, we come to the end of News Brief. Of course, you can find this and much more other information on our website, closerenglish.net, where you can read opinion articles or watch the special interviews. Invitation is made. You continue with us. Always Telesur, always together, connecting our global thousands. Next time, thank you for watching.